Hello and welcome to episode 295 of the Smash Accept podcast. I'm your host, Michael Royer. You can find me on Twitter at DynastyDadFF. We keep going through these different exercises here where we talk about, all the rookie quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, tight ends that Snoog and I have been hammering on Twitter, hammering on YouTube. And again, make sure you guys hit that smash subscribe button for all of our content. And now we're getting to the next stage in the game, Snoog, where we start talking about landing spots. And we did that with Dane Brugler's. We started to break down what does this look like, right? And step one of the process is really get to know the talent. Step two is assess those landing spots, see where people go and see where that validation is. And this year's class is going to be all about that, right? Like right now, we know the 101. There are very few landing spots where Ashton Jeanty is not the 101, but not everybody knows who's going to be the 102. Some people have it as Cam Ward, others Shedeur Sanders, some Travion Henderson. I have Tet McMillan. There's a lot of different guys there. There's going to be a ton to unpack once we start to move throughout this process.
Yeah, this is one of those classes that I don't think, like we were talking backstage, I don't think anybody knows what's going to happen come rookie draft days in May or late April. So I'm excited for this class. We know the strength of it. I'm going to try to stay true to that and just understand tight end and running back is the strength of this class. Although I do love the top three wide receivers, and there's some steals in that kind of second round range. I mean, Jalen Royals, Eli Guy-Omain, or some of those other guys. But the strength is running back, tight end. Let's focus on that and really hit on these guys. I mean, in this mock we're going to be going over today, that first round, there was just one first round running back. So we can't really get an accurate gauge for kind of like Travion Henderson, Quinshad Judkins, Myron Hampton, Caleb Johnson, all these other running backs, until some of those deeper second and third round mocks come out from some of these NFL draft analysts. But right now, I mean, it's fun. We can stick to our board. We can ride some of the landing spots we got, some of the projected quarterback spots in draft capital, and go from there. So I'm excited to jump into this one. Mel Kiper, he's the draft GOAT. He is like, I mean, since I wasn't even born when he started. So it's funny seeing him back in the like 90s or early 2000s when it's like young Mel Kiper on the ESPN draft. So
the craziest thing about Mel Kiper is I heard he eats a pumpkin pie every day. Like not a slice, a whole freaking pumpkin pie. Wow. And when we talk about the Smash Accept Patreon, that's not just a slice. That is a whole pie. Our guy here, Chris Peterson, he's in there. We were talking about wide receivers. And guys, if we get up to 5 super chats tonight, we will give away a spot, an invitation to Smash Accept 17. So many guys are like, I got to get in that league. I got to get in there. Guys in the Patreon are literally begging for it. So you guys on Twitter, on YouTube, you guys have an opportunity here tonight. And we're trying to go live every Tuesday night on trade shows, 9:30 with Brock Dynasty. Make sure you guys follow him. But Chris wants to know, he said, Egbuka screams lad BTJ type stealth hammer of this class. He's overshadowed by the sexier prospects on the college squad, pro-ready skill set with a good landing spot, sub 4.4 at the combine. How high would you consider taking him? And to go with that, this Chris is in the Patreon. He said, P.S. absolutely love the pod and the Patreon. Y'all helped me make the playoffs in 13 of 15 leagues and 5 title games this year. Smash Accept to the freaking moon. Thank you so much, Chris. We really appreciate that. 13 of his 15 leagues he got into the ship because he joined that. We talked about last show when we were going over things where the one guy said he hasn't won a league in over a decade to being in the championship in 3 of his 5 leagues. I mean, the Smash Accept Patreon is feeding families. We're here to help you guys win. That's patreon.com/Smash Accept. Let's get back to his original question here, Snoog, which I love it. He said, this is someone that you and I both love here. Emeka Egbuka in this particular mock draft goes at 21 to the Steelers. Is he the underappreciated guy that we're going to see just move up draft boards? Because I'm starting to see some people prefer him over Tet McMillan right now. I mean, he is going to be a consummate pro. He's going to be phenomenal.
Yeah, if there's a situation like if he goes to like the Broncos or one of these better landing spots, I think in the first round that he's better than Tet for fantasy football. I wouldn't be shocked. Emeka Egbuka is a guy complete pro ready, as Chris nailed it on the head there. He's a better prospect than Ladd. He's a better prospect than Worthy was. He's probably a more complete prospect than BTJ was coming out, but I think I would have liked BTJ's upside a lot better because that's kind of what we were chasing with him in that late first round range, which is the guy that could be a top 10 fantasy football wide receiver. And what was he? A top 10 fantasy football wide receiver. So Emeka Egbuka is a guy that might not go as high as he should in the draft. Like he might be in the 20s, just like JSN kind of got disrespected. That was 2 drafts ago now, though. So I think the NFL is starting to come around on like taking these guys higher. But right now, I think Emeka Egbuka is a guy that could go top 20 easy. He's a complete prospect, elite route runner, good in space, good after the catch, a guy that can do it all type. So I'm really excited for him. He's like a wide receiver 2, 1B almost for me in this class. I have some very, very smart people out there that have him as the 1. So I'm excited to kind of see how his combine and his process works out, because he seems like a guy ready to go, pro ready, high IQ player, good against zone and man coverage.
I was excited for Dane Brugler's mock. We had 11 guys that were, in the skill set offensive positions go in the first round. For Mel Kipers, he toned it down to 9, but we still have 9 guys, and that's only 1 running back. Snoog, this running back class, we know, the second round is going to be littered with Hampton, Caleb Johnson. Like we are going to get so many guys in there. Quinshon Judkins, Travion Henderson, maybe even Cam Scatterbo. I mean, we're going to have such a loaded running back class. 1 through 15, this is one of the most talented, if not the most talented, that we've charted since I started podcasting in 2019, where like we have a loaded class, and I'm excited to talk about that. Before we do, let's just jump right into this, okay? So the 101 in all formats, I don't care what you're in. So many guys keep questioning this, and I feel like if you're questioning this, you're behind the game. Ashton Jeanty is the 101 in every single format, unless you play a heavy premium IDP, because then Travis Hunter becomes in that conversation for 101, because everybody's like, Dad, what is the one scenario where you don't take Ashton Jeanty 101? And I can't think of anything other than IDP. Like the landing spot would have to be absolutely atrocious. And Tet McMillan goes to the Patriots, and we're like, okay, I can consider taking the wide receiver here. But even then, Ashton Jeanty's talent is so good. He's the 101 no matter what. Every single format. He is a truly generational running back. He's going to be a guy that you are going to set it and forget it for the next 5 or 6 years. This particular mock, he goes to the Broncos, and I love this landing spot. This is a team that is in desperate need of a running back. This is a team where we've seen it in the past, where if they utilize him, Sean Payton could utilize him in a way where he is going to see crazy amount of receptions, because most people don't realize how undervalued he really is as a pass catching running back as well.
Yeah, exactly. You nailed it on the head there, and you guys will see just the production profile and the kind of the draft profile that we have up on the screen here. But Ashton Jeanty, I mean, he's a guy. Anybody that goes for over 2,000 rushing yards in college is elite. He had like 1,500 plus as a sophomore, broke out as a true freshman, 500 plus receiving yards and 45 plus catches as a sophomore. I don't even have to sell anybody on him, so we don't have to spend too much time on him. There's not a situation or a scenario where he's not the 101 for me. Even if he goes like in the mid to late 20s, he's the 101. Like he's better than every running back in this class. The running back's the strength of this class. He's the best prospect out of any of the fantasy football players in this class. I think if you like just look at big board for like the talent and the player they are at their position, he's a top 5 player in this draft class overall from an NFL perspective.
Yeah, and I don't think that, both mocks had him going 20 to the Broncos. I don't
He's
think
not making it that far. No, not even close.
I don't think he makes it past 10 with the Bears or 12 with the Cowboys. And let's just be honest.
And if he does, a team's going to trade up and get him. Like I could see the Chargers jumping up into like 15, 16 and getting them.
Yeah, and 101 right now on Dynasty Data Lab is somewhere in the late second. If he goes to the Bears or the Cowboys, the 101 can only go up in value at this point. Like there are very few scenarios where he will not go up. What gets trickier than Snoog, and what everybody keeps asking me about, is with that 102. So now we talk 102, I think we have to there's a lot of different options. Talk to me first a little bit about how important landing spot is going to be for this, because I could see, depending on how you like things, there are about 5 guys that you could take at 102 right now and not be completely blasted for it. That I think there's 3 that I'm pretty confident in, 1 that I'm taking for sure. But talk to me about the 102.
Yeah, I think from a prospect perspective and who I'd want, it's Tet McMillan here. Just a guy that I think is going to go top 10 in the draft, probably to the Panthers or the Patriots are my 2 landing spots for him there. He goes to the Raiders, 6th overall in this mock. I'm not going to say I love it, but we saw DK Metcalf there with Pete Carroll, how good he was. Kind of a big, fast wide receiver that wins downfield. he's the new coach for the Raiders. They have Brock Bowers there, so they do have another guy. So it's not just him and only him. Like, they actually have some type of offense built. Aiden O'Connell isn't good at all, but he's not like a bad player you want for your fan. Like, Jacoby Myers and Brock Bowers are both good. And like, Myers isn't even close to as good as Tet McMillan. So I think that if they can get like a vet, like a Russ, like they talked about, like Russ going there or some of these other guys, like I think it could be a decent landing spot where people are shying away from it. And then he ends up maybe being the 103 or 104 and he's a value. But that's who I would go with here. I mean, Cam Ward's my QB1. I don't love this quarterback class. Cam Ward is good. I don't love the Titans landing spot. It's honestly a crapshoot here because Ashton Jeanty is the only RB that goes. So we don't know anything about where these RBs land. We can just kind of base them off evaluations. We'll talk about some of the other guys and where they go later on. But for here in this mock draft, and what I'm expecting is going to be Tet McMillan 101. Back-to-back 1,300-plus yard seasons, 21 years old, 6'5", projected to run in the 4.4s, good athlete. He's training at Expos Training. They're one of the best pre-draft and combine training programs out there. Xavier Worthy, Jameer Gibbs, Devin A-Chain, all these guys that ran elite 40 times, and they have a good track record is training with Tet McMillan. So I have good faith that he's going to have a good combine, jump out of the room, and get top 5 draft capital.
And I'm hearing a lot of people I on Twitter today talking about selling Brock Bowers with the potential of Tet McMillan coming there, with the potential of, a new coaching staff where, in Seattle, Pete Carroll just rotated tight ends. And I hear people say, well, what if he used the rotation? Brock Bowers is the best tight end in the league, period. He's not going to. The fun thing about the Raiders now to me is you have Seattle background with Pete Carroll where they drafted Russell Wilson late. And then you have Tom Brady, who's going to be there. He's definitely going to be involved in the process. I see Joey T putting on here, another guy in the Patreon. I think Darnold goes to the Raiders. They're not going to waste their early draft pick on a guy in this quarterback class. I think they're actually going to do it right for once. They're going to be in this spot where they are going to go ahead and they're going to just go with a veteran quarterback. They're going to make sure they assess the team's needs. And in this situation, go for the wide receiver. They already have a solid offensive line. They took Brock Bowers last year. Chris Peterson says Tet equals Marv's year 1 if he goes to Oakland. Not a train wreck, but not ideal. I think you're right. I think if he goes to that spot, it's not elite level production right off the bat, but I do think it's solid production. I mean, Marv was still 820 yards and 8 touchdowns, like not Malik or Brian Thomas Jr.
He didn't lose value, really. I mean, he did. He did because people had him as a top 4 to 5 wide receiver, but he's still like top 10, 12. And he's like, but yeah, he did lose a little bit of value, but he's going to hold that. Even if he goes out next year and has like 900 yards and 8 touchdowns, like he's not going to lose any value.
Dude, I'm glad you said that because I did a post today. We just did our startup. Make sure you guys go check that out. But last year's 102 went from the 203 value to now Marv's worth the 210. He didn't drop much at all. The 103 went from 212 to now 103 in Jaden Daniels. Malik Neighbors from the 307 to 111. 105 was Drake May from 312 to 212, a full round. 106, that would have been Brock Bowers, 407 all the way up to 108. 107, 512. Even though Roma Dunze was, let's be honest, was buns this year, went from 512 to 412. And then at the 108, JJ McCarthy didn't even play. He went from the 606 to the 512.
The only way a wide receiver will lose their values if they have like a Quentin Johnson rookie year. Like that's like the only way. Like they got to be absolutely dogs to be like to lose value like that.
What's awesome about that is if you're in startups right now, and I posted this and I have it in the Patreon of where rookie picks are going, they're way, way too late. I mean, you're talking about getting 107 in like the 5th or 6th round. Hey, another awesome one here. Our guy Marty, he says, keep up the great work, fellas. Really appreciate that. I know you've been making sure he was in the Patreon. He's been always involved on YouTube, on Twitter. Really appreciate that. Thank you for the help on that one. Awesome work. We love when you helping you guys out for sure. Next one. And this is where it gets a little bit more tricky. We get into a spot where you're like, ooh, what are we going to do here? And landing spot is really the final piece here. I think it ends up being where if Travion Henderson goes to the Cowboys in the early 2nd, he's my 102. Like that's how fluid this process has to be.
Him or Judkins for me.
Exactly. Judkins. I mean, even even
Or
Hampton
if Caleb
in that area.
Johnson,
Caleb
Johnson goes round 1 to Minnesota, like a lot are projecting him, or goes to Minnesota. I think
Yeah.
Caleb. We talked about this. I talked about this on Twitter today. Judkins and Travion Henderson are way less scheme dependent than Hampton and Johsnon are. I think Johnson and Hampton need a certain situation to thrive and like have their skill sets taken advantage of the best. I think Henderson and Judkins are plug and play basically anywhere. Yeah, like Johnson like goes to KOC in Minnesota in his own run scheme, and he's through the roof. But like Travion Henderson or Judkins can go to the Pats, can go to the Raiders, can go to the Vikings, can go to the Cowboys. They can go anywhere and be good because they played at the highest level. They played in different run schemes. Judkins played at Ole Miss and at Ohio State and was good in both. He had 1,000 yards in 3 straight seasons. So that's where I'm kind of at with the running backs. Is I want versatility in a class like this because when a coach is on the clock, they're going to take the running back that fits their offense and their scheme. They don't care if Judkins looks better than Hampton if he's not better than him in a gap scheme or in a zone scheme. Like they're going to pick to fit their run scheme. And that's the one flaw about kind of the running back position in drafts is not always the best guys taken, and that's fine. But that's how, like, Seattle wanted a big bruiser, 3-down guy that can pass block good, and Zach Charbonnet. They took him over Ache, and like that's how it goes. So it's kind of the way it goes at running back.
Yeah, and for me, I'm taking Cam Ward here. I think Cam Ward is he's my 1A when it comes to the quarterback position, just because he makes some of the throws that you just can't teach. He makes the difficult plays look easy. He looks relaxed in the pocket, sometimes too much. But Tennessee is not the ideal landing spot. But you got to be looking at it and just say, you know what? If he goes 101, that value is going to go up. People are going to want to be associated with that. The weapons are not ideal, but I think Tennessee wants to start to build some things. The Will Levis experiment is completely over. This is not something that you're going to see again. I low-key would love to see Ward and Shedeur Sanders fall further in the draft than top 5. I think they would thrive much better falling into situations like Shedeur Sanders falling to 6 to the Raiders, or falling, somewhere deeper into the draft where you're like, okay, this isn't the worst situation. They got some weapons. They could kind of get into that, get into a groove. I could see maybe even, New Orleans, they're talking about shipping off Derek Carr. You get him, one of these guys go to 9, or you try to have them fall back, into an area where it just makes more sense. But for me here right now, it's Cam Ward. I think it's pretty comfortable that he would be my 103.
Yeah, I think in this range, like after the first 2 picks, even after the first pick, I think like what I'd be doing on the clock is trying to trade back to like 5 or 6 and getting another first on top in the future. I think that's the play. Don't go out and do that now because I don't know. We don't really know yet. Like there could be a ton of good landing spots, and there could be one that's like Tet to the Pats or to the Panthers, and then you could get the Giants or the Raiders trading up and taking Cam Ward, and then it's like, crap, I traded back to like, but I'm almost like, let's just do it now because we can see that I know running back's not like this premium position that people value, but we can see that like it's hard for me to take Shedeur Sanders over Quinshad Judkins and some of these elite running back prospects because I don't think Shedeur Sanders is that good. Like I think he is a guy that could be top 15 at his ceiling, like 15 or 16 or 14. Like, so it's tough for me here, but
the huge disconnect right now, and I saw a post, I think Zoltan put it out there today. Would you rather have JJ McCarthy or the 102? It was 50-50. You're like, so
that's crazy.
Really
I would way rather the 102 than JJ.
The interesting part, though, Snoog, is if you look at, I think JJ McCarthy would be the QB1 of this class. I feel like people are just taking the.
I don't even think he would be. I'd take Cam Ward over him.
But they're in the same conversation.
Yeah,
what I'm saying definitely. Is people are pushing these quarterbacks way up because they need one, not because it's. And these are not the guys that we build around in Dynasty. You and I have been over that. We did a quarterback show just to kind of give you guys an idea of what you should do if you have the 103, 104 with Shedeur and Cam Ward. Here at the 4 spot, though, assuming he's going to go in the second round, I think there's a 95% chance Travion Henderson goes in the second round. And I think he's going to be, the Raiders have an early second. The Chargers have an early second. There's so many teams. The Cowboys have an early second. If he goes to one of those landing spots that are truly, he's a 3-down bell cow. Like he could be Jahmyr Gibbs light, where if he goes on a team where he's the 1B, 1A, however you want to look at it, I think we're fine, but he has bell cow upside.
Yeah, Travion Henderson reminds me a lot of like if Devin A. Chain and Kenneth Walker were if they had like a twin brother or like something like that. Like the blend of those two traits, like he's got that like fluent, efficient move like that A-Chain has, just a fluid mover, like no wasted movement. Can get north-south. Like he has a lot more power though, like Kenneth Walker does, and a lot more like size and burst than like an A-Chain, which is really cool. Travion Henderson, I think, projects is the second best fantasy running back in this class. Quinshon Judkins outproduced him the entire college football playoffs, and they were pretty neck and neck the whole year. I wouldn't be shocked, especially with Judkins declaring. He must have. It's not that I think he heard good, which I do think he probably did, but I guarantee you he got a bag thrown at him to stay at Ohio State. And the fact that he declaring 21 years old, early declare in this type of class, the profile check's good. I had time to do a lot of diving in between the consensus top 5 running backs, so top 4 outside of Jeanty. Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins were head and shoulders by far the best freshman running backs in this class. The only 2 with 1,000 yards, which is a very, very high, good number. Nick Singleton was the 3rd, but he went back to school. But I mean, these 2 were good their whole entire careers in college. They could have been an RB1 they would have been RB1 overall last year. They can be top 3 in any given class. It's going to literally come down to who gets the better landing spot and who isn't split in the backfield in the NFL. I'm a little bit more worried that Henderson will split a backfield, but I think Henderson will be better than Judkins if they're both splitting a backfield. Yeah, I just think the receiving upside and that's going to lead to more fantasy points. So they're so wishy-washy for me right now, but I think them two are just above Caleb Johnson and Amari and Hampton. Just for me right now, same tier, but I prefer them just because of versatility. And I talked about that scheme dependent, like they're plug and plays anywhere. I think they're going to go day 2. The number one thing too is scouts had a lot more time to watch them. Like they got to watch them against Texas, against Notre Dame, against all these Oregon, like all these good defenses, and they showed out. So I think that's good for their draft stock. It's hard to take them over Shedeur Sanders here with his landing spot, but I would just, if they get second round draft capital, I would go running back here or I'd trade back.
Yeah, and Shedeur Sanders goes at 3 to the Giants. Chris Peterson says his neighbors get a boost with Sanders. I think for sure. Yeah, I mean, the thing about Shedeur Sanders is he is surgical with how he operates in the pocket with his precision. I mean, 76.8% completion percentage last year was number 1 in all of college football with over 100 attempts. He's someone that I think gives them stability if they go that route, but it's not elite level upside, right? He's a top 12 to 15 type dynasty upside. But it definitely does big things for Malik Neighbors. I think it does big things for the culture in New York. And I think we're going to see Shedeur Sanders would be in the argument for the 102 here, where if they go and they beef up the offensive line a little bit more and they get, a couple weapons here in free agency, the Giants could be a team that's a little bit more excitable to have a quarterback there. We know Daboll's still there and he did wonders for Josh Allen. Now we know this is not, Shedeur Sanders is not Josh Allen, by the way. Bills are taking that Super Bowl, man. I've been a Bills fan forever. It's got to happen.
So.
But I think Shedeur Sanders here is a good landing spot. I think if you look at Cam, they're 1A, 1B. I mean, Tennessee is a much lower landing spot for me. I watched them in person. The offensive line is horrendous. The weapons are not the same as you would have with a Malik Neighbors there in town. So I think this closes the gap between the two where I could see taking Shedeur Sanders at 102 instead of, Tet McMillan or instead of Cam Ward with this particular kind of setup.
Am I crazy that I literally think like right now, just for what we know, this is a big tier up until like the 110? Like I think
I have it to about 8.
I'd say I'd honestly just give it a Cam Ward. I'd put him up there with Tet, but I think like 104 to 109 is a tier. Because I think like you could bunch up Travion, Judkins, Sanders, Burden, Emeka Egbuka, and Caleb Johnson just with what we know. I don't think that Like, I think any of the running backs can jump up into that next tier for sure, but we just have no clue what's going to happen, where they're going to go, how they're going to test. We could just kind of base it off like talent evaluation and where we're at here. But I think,
and I'm so glad
with the
you said that,
106,
because we can trade right now. Like, let's be honest, from 102 to 106, you could probably get a first.
If I do it right now,
do it now, because it's going to be a mid-second by the time the season rolls around.
Yeah, I agree.
You know, this
people will
this
realize.
Is gonna be, I think unless Travion Henderson gets or Quinshon Judkins get an amazing landing spot, the 102 is going to lose some value. We're going to have a hard time recouping to that. Since we've done guys in the top 10 picks, a lot of times, you know, we don't pay attention to the other positions. We want to talk quarterback, wide receiver, running back. But Will Campbell going to the Bears as the number 1 offensive tackle in this class from LSU really just further cements Caleb Williams' potential route to a superstar this year. Ben Johnson there, those 3 elite weapons, and now you add an offensive tackle because he was under duress at all times. Everything points to Caleb Williams really taking the next step in 2025, and there is not a better offensive tackle in this class. I think this is huge, and people don't pay attention to it for fantasy, but that's going to be something that really, you know, pushes him up boards. We wanted New England to take an offensive weapon. They get Abdul Carter at 4, which I don't see happening. The other guy that goes in the top, obviously number 2 overall, we have to talk about Travis Hunter. So Travis Hunter gonna go to the Browns at 2. There's a real good chance he goes 1 to Tennessee, because Tennessee has tipped their hat and said they're taking a generational player. There are only 2 generational players in this entire draft. And I saw the clip of Shador and
I think
Cam
there's only
Ward,
one. I think Travis Hunter is.
I don't think
Abdul Carter.
No, I'm saying
I want to say Jeanty is, but like we just had Bijan and Gibbs. We just had.
But
like,
I mean,
we said Bowers was generational because he was.
He
like
is.
There really was no tight end prospect like him. I think we've had Jeanty's recently, like you, especially for you. Like you were there for Saquon. You were there for like.
He's calling me old, guys.
We get LaDainian Tomlinson.
Dude, I did. I've had LaDainian Tomlinson.
You were probably playing fantasy there on paper, right? Like on the freaking.
My first year of fantasy football, no lie, is like you'd start your guys, but you couldn't get it. We'd have to do the math. We'd have to like figure out what we were doing. Dude, I had freaking Peyton Manning, Carson Palmer, Sean Alexander. I know. That's
those were the days, though.
Like, you didn't even know if you won until Tuesday. You know, and then even then you're like, did the commission do the math right? Are we okay on this? But Travis Hunter to the Browns.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's say, you know, for this purpose, the Browns really don't have a quarterback either. But let's say Jameis stays and they make him a wide receiver only.
I was just going to say that. Let's play a game. Let's play a game. Travis Hunter goes to the Browns or the Titans. Doesn't matter the landing spot. He plays full-time wide receiver. Where are you taking him?
102.
Agreed.
If they say there's no other way.
If he plays 60 to 70%, if they say you're going to play about 60 to 70% of snaps, play primarily wide receiver, but you're going to play nickel corner, where are you taking him?
106.
Really? I think I'd take him like 103 to 104-ish in that range.
60. I don't think they're going to come out and say, "Hey, here's 60%."
It's tough with this running back class.
What I don't want to see,
if he plays, like, if they're like, you're going to play both, but we don't have any, like, nothing about it. We don't know nothing. I think the only place you could really take him is like 110 to 112. If we don't know anything, and they're like, he's going to be a playmaker for us, like, and that's all we hear. Like, I'm like, shit, am I going to waste my 104 on a guy that might not even play wide out?
So if he gets 60% of snaps and they say that, would you rather him or Luther Burden, who now on back-to-back mocks from both Dane Brugler and Luther's going to Dallas at 12?
Yeah.
We got to start looking at this.
Travis Hunter would be wide receiver 4 for me if he plays like 50, 60% of snaps.
Yeah.
If he plays anything upwards of 70, 80, 90, he'd probably be my wide receiver 1. And if he plays like 80 to 90.
I think the gap, if Tet McMillan goes to the Patriots, he's my 102. I'm not even thinking about anything else. But the Patriots are involved. They're talking about DK Metcalf. They're talking about trading for A.J. Brown. They want to get him an alpha. And if they get Tet, to the moon. But if Tet goes to the Raiders and Luther goes to Dallas as the secondary piece with Dak Prescott, that gap has closed dramatically.
He would score. I think he would be like Jordan Addison in the Vikings. Like, And it's funny because I actually don't think they play alike, but they kind of do
No.
with how they. I think Burden's a much better yak player, but they can both kind of win downfield. I think he'd just be like a not a high volume player, but he'd be like a manufactured touchdown machine in that offense. It's funny because Mel Kiper and Dane Brugler both are mocking him 12th to the Cowboys. So it's like we're expecting the Cowboys to go Jeanty or Burden or Emeka at this point. I don't think anybody knows if it's Burden or Emeka. I think Emeka is better. I think he has a higher floor, better route runner, just better complete player. So he's actually my wide receiver 2 in this class. But if Luther Burden goes, we'll just talk about these guys like they're 106 and 107 like we are, or 107, 108. But Luther Burden and Emeka Egbuka, if one goes to the Cowboys and one goes to the Steelers, I don't think you can. I think it's just, like Emeka goes to the Steelers 21 here. If Pickens stays, the landing spot's terrible. If Pickens leaves, I don't love the landing spot still because who the hell is their quarterback? I'm like Burden 12th overall to the Cowboys. They're clearly going to bring him in to be a high-powered number 2. It's just a really, really good landing spot and situation. Everyone wants to trash this wide receiver class. The big 3 that we just talked about, Tet McMillan, Luther Burden, and Emeka Egbuka, if they all get good landing spots, like say Tet's Carolina, Luther's Dallas, and Emeka goes to like the Broncos 20th or the Chargers 22 or whoever in that range, or the Bengals and they let T. Higgins walk.
What? Yes,
that's going to save this draft class right there. That'll save it. Those 3 wideouts. They could all be top 15 to 20 guys.
Yeah. Tyreek gets traded and Miami takes Egbuka because Egbuka's stock is going to shoot up after the combine. He's going to run sub 4.4, and then you look at him maybe going to the Bengals to replace T. Higgins, maybe going to Seattle to replace DK Metcalf. Like there's a lot of opportunities there in that 13 to 21 range. Yeah. And I'm fine with him going to the Steelers. I would love him going to the Chargers. The Chargers take another guy in this draft, which is really an awesome pick. We have Quinshon Judkins, Caleb Johnson. We've already talked about both of them, so I don't think we need to go deep into it. They're both going to go late round 1, early round 2. The thing that I keep hearing, Snoog, is because the second round is going to be loaded with stud running backs, teams might be willing to trade from mid-30s to late 20s to get their guy.
That's what I'm thinking. It feels like the wide receiver class of last year. And I remember how much flack I was getting when I was putting out so many tweets like there's going to be 7 or 8 wide receivers in the first round of this draft taken, like upwards of 6. I think the line was 5 and I was smashing that. I made like $200 off that. It feels like that. Like if I could bet, I think 10 plus running backs go within the first 3 rounds easily.
Yeah. I mean, you got to think Minnesota's a player for a running back. Yep. Chargers at 22. You got to think.
Broncos,
Commanders at 29.
Bears.
Chiefs at 31. Like there's a lot of teams there towards that back half that are going to want to jump. They're going to want to jump. When you get to 201, like all the early teams, the bad teams need running back.
Let's talk about the people that have no one. The Steelers are known for taking first-round running backs. They have nobody. Najee Harris, Jalen Warren, free agents. Chargers, J.K. Dobbins, and that's it. And he's a free agent. They got nobody. They're in the late 20s. Raiders have absolutely nobody, and they have a ton of draft capital to get up into that late first range because they're picking at 37.
And even at 37, they're going to get.
That's at Vrabel. They're gonna want to pound the rock, run the football, open up the run game, build up the offensive line. I don't think Ramondre Stevenson's that guy there. So it's just I think there's way too many like Bears. Like we can go on and on and on about who needs running back. So I think running backs are going to take over the mid to late first of this draft, and it should be that way. I think.
What I love here, is we have 2 tight ends. Who, if you're in tight end premium, if you're in 2 tight end leagues, they get fantastic landing spots. I mean, I think Tyler Warren now on back-to-back has gone 14 to the Colts. I agree that we both have Colston Loveland as our tight end 2 in the class. But if he goes to the Chargers and Warren goes to the Colts, sign me up. Colston Loveland, move him way up your boards. The Chargers need another weapon, and I think this would give him that big body target that Justin Herbert so desperately needs. And I think you have a phenomenal top 8 tight end in both of these guys. Both of these guys, if you're in 2 tight end leagues, you can put up there at 106, 107. I think both of these guys are going to have phenomenal careers. And we haven't done our tight end deep dive, but these 2 guys are absolute certified studs in this class. All right, Snoog, we'll keep going with that.
Plug it in my headphones to die.
I got you. I love Colson Loveland here at 22. I love Warren at 14. And in this same area, I mean, you got to look. Kelvin Banks goes to the 49ers, the offensive tackle from Texas. That's big to support Brock Purdy. There's a lot of offensive tackles in this league, in this draft, that are really good. And people don't pay enough attention to that. The Texans get Josh Simmons from Ohio State. Man, CJ Stroud needs that, and there's like a lot of opportunities here to take those offensive tackles. But Snoog, this class is running back and tight end oriented, both of these guys. And we're going to see probably Fannin get up into that early second too, because guys are starting to fall in love with him too.
Yeah, I love in this mock that I did. So I did my own mock just based off Mel Kiper's, and I actually took Colson Loveland over Tyler Warren. Because I truly think the Chargers versus the Colts is like night and day. Like you think I want to take a guy that's going to be Anthony Richardson's target? Like I'll take Justin Herbert's target 10 times out of 10. Like it has nothing that they're both good enough, and they're both really high end prospects to me at the tight end position. That whoever goes to the better spot is probably my tight end one in this class. And Loveland's like 4 years younger than Warren, so it's just also another plus on top for dynasty value. But I mean, like Loveland, Warren, both first round grades for me. It's tight end week next week, so I'm excited to jump into this tight end class because there's about 4 to 5 guys. I mean, Gunnar Helms, a guy from Texas, another guy that's going to probably be a day 2 pick, Harold Fannin Jr., like you mentioned. Very, very high end analytics tight end prospect, tight end 3 for me right now. But I think he is going to sneak into that early day 2 range and be a guy like a Jonnu Smith, just an instant threat, versatile, can play all over the field. I mean, his back-to-back games against Penn State and Texas A&M, both ranked teams at the beginning of the year. He had 140-plus yards in both of those games, 10-plus receptions and a touchdown. So didn't matter the competition. He was on Bowling Green, and he was still putting out against the best teams in the country. Very, very good tight end class, a running back class. I think in 0.75 tight end premium or higher, you could argue these guys in that mid-first range. But in your standard, like 0.25, 0.5, I think they're kind of on the back end of the late first, just of right now. I think 109 to 112 is going to be where they go.
So we've now witnessed 2 mocks, we from 2 of the best in the business. And the biggest thing for me is that I am trying to I'm moving back right now. I don't see a lot of scenarios where the 103 to 108 have any difference. If you don't need a quarterback, and again, if you have the 103, you're trading for a quarterback, you don't need to draft here. But I mean, I'm reserving the 102 because I think Tet to the Patriots is just going to be phenomenal. But 3 to 8, there's no difference right now between Burden, Sanders, Henderson, Egbuka, Judkins, Caleb Johnson, and some even Amarion Hampton and some of these tight ends. You're on mute, bro.
If you had to guess who was the second first round running back taken in this class and in the real first round of the NFL draft, who would you predict and why? Well, I think it's Travion.
It's Henderson.
It's the speed and the receiving. I think it has to be Henderson or Judkins because they're the most complete. I think one of them does.
I think all 5 of them go before pick 40.
Really?
Like that's
it's gonna be like a run. I think if someone trades up and takes a Henderson or a Judkins, I think I agree with you. Like I think Johnson, Hampton, and the other one is just people are gonna be like taking them, just taking them.
We keep talking about it. I mean, if you have a running back who's not named Gibbs, Bijan, Saquon, now's time to start making some trades because let's look at these running back landing spots where we didn't even talk about Scatabo or Sampson or James. There's so many running backs in this class. It's like Devin Neal. I'm starting to really like him.
He's in my top 6 to 7.
We're talking about guys now that are going to change running back landscapes. They're going to go to a team that's already got a decent running back, right? Like you get into a spot where you have a lot of people still like Ramondre Stevenson, but you get one of these running backs in there, all of a sudden it's major competition. Your second round rookie picks are going to be hyper valuable because you're going to have a lot of guys. I mean, we didn't even talk about Harold Fannin Jr. We didn't talk about, Trey Harris. We didn't talk about so many guys, Tez Johnson. We're just even, Jalen Monroe, Jackson Dart. The second round right now, Snoog, has me really excited. Like last year's second round is full of busts, but this year's second round, it's not as elite on the top.
Deep,
but it's deep. Yeah. So you're
going to get. I think Matthew Golden and Jackson Dart are two names that could sneak into the first round. I don't think both will. I think that's just a possibility. Or early day 2, you got Trey Harris, you got Devin Neal, Cam Scatabo, Ollie Gordon, DJ Giddens, Alec Iomaner, Jalen Royal. Like, you have a bunch of names, Harold Fenton Jr. Like, you just have so many names. I think that there's going to be a couple players that get first round draft capital that you get 203 or 204 like last year, because I don't think that it's so top heavy, like 1 through 9 or 10, like last year was so elite.
1 through 8 last
year
was
no
loaded.
Running backs that were good. So it was like, you're just taking one. Like, it was like to the point like this year, like how it's top end with the wideouts this year. Like, you're going to get to the point where like we were taking like Xavier Legette, wide receiver 10, over like the RB2 in the 24 class. Like, I think we're going to get to that point where it's like, do I take Jordan James or Trevor Etienne, my RB12, or do I take Jalen Royal as my wide receiver 6, like in this range, right? Like, I think it's going to be fun like that. I think it's going to be, Chris. I just saw Chris's thing. Henderson to the Bears is the dream spot, I think. He's literally a better Swift, like a much better Swift is a good way to look at it. So I think that I thought would be huge. We
know that Ben Johnson hates himself some DeAndre Swift. So, guys, I mean, we are, like I said, we're going to be trying to take over, what we're trying to do from the podcast onto YouTube. We're going to make sure that every Tuesday night we're bringing you trade shows. If you guys come on there again, we're trying to, if we get that super chat, we're going to give stuff away. We're going to try to, make things enjoyable for you guys. We're going to answer as many questions as you can. Make sure you guys follow Snoog at FF Snoog. Follow myself at DynastyDad FF. Hit that smash subscribe button. And, we got to thank you guys for tuning in and just hope you enjoy the process.